The evening sky glowed in shades of gold and soft pink as the small village prepared for a quiet celebration. The gentle scent of jasmine floated through the air, mixing with the aroma of freshly baked bread. Inside a modest wooden house, Sam carefully placed a few flowers into a vase, white lilies, favorite. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from emotion. That day had finally come. She was 8 months pregnant, her belly gently rounded beneath her pale blue dress. Every step she took was slow and careful. Yet her eyes were full of life, shining with both nervousness and joy. Lee was returning home after months away on a mission that had nearly cost him his life. 4 nights too, Sam had prayed for this day. She had sat alone by the window, whispering Lee's name into the darkness, afraid he would never return. Now, the counselor had told her to rest and not exhaust herself, but how could she? How could a woman stay calm when her heart was racing with both love and fear? Neighbors helped decorate the small yard with lights. A simple table was set, filled with dishes Lee once loved, sweet rice cakes, grilled fish, and lotus tea. Sam moved slowly, her hand brushing her belly. "He's coming back to us," she whispered softly to the child inside. "Daddy's finally coming home." Outside, as the evening breeze swept through, the sound of a distant vehicle echoed from the road, steady, familiar, real. Sam froze, her heart skipping a beat. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. The long wait, the lonely nights, the fear, the hope, all of it was about to end. That night was not just a reunion. It was the meeting of 2 hearts that had endured distance, danger, and longing. Sam stood by the gate, her body trembling, her lips whispering a prayer, as the headlights drew closer, lighting up the tears on her smiling face. The vehicle came to a slow halt in front of the small wooden house. For a moment, everything around Sam became silent, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The car door opened, and Lee stepped out, dressed in a plain shirt and dark trousers. His once sharp face was thinner now, his skin slightly tanned from the sun. But those eyes, deep, gentle, and searching, were unmistakably his. Sam's breath caught. She wanted to run to him, to cry out his name, but her legs felt heavy, frozen by emotion. Lee hesitated too, his gaze locking onto her as if time had folded between the months of separation. Then, slowly, he walked toward her. Sam, his voice cracked, soft yet full of disbelief. It had been so long since he said her name out loud. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could answer. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "You're home. You really came back." Lee reached out his hand, hesitant at first, then gently brushed away her tears. "I promised, didn't I?" he whispered, his touch lingering on her face. "I promised I'd return to you." At that moment, something shifted inside her. All the pain, the loneliness, the sleepless nights melted into warmth. She took his hand and pressed it to her belly. "You didn't just come back to me," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "You came back to us." Lee froze. His hand trembled slightly as he felt the faint movement beneath her dress, the gentle kick of the baby who had waited, just like its mother. A stunned smile spread across his face, one that carried disbelief and overwhelming tenderness. "I didn't know," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "You carried all this, alone." Sam nodded, tears still falling, but now they were tears of peace. "I had to believe you would come back," she said. "It was the only thing that kept me strong." Lee pulled her into his arms carefully, as if afraid she might vanish. The village lights shimmered behind them, casting a golden glow around their embrace. For the first time in months, they both breathed as one again, and for a fleeting second, it felt like the world had stopped spinning just to watch them reunite. That night, the sound of gentle rain tapping against the roof filled the quiet house. The small celebration had ended, and everyone had gone home, leaving only Lee and Sam surrounded by soft candlelight and the warmth of familiarity that had been missing for so long. Lee sat beside the window, watching the rain trickle down the glass. His hand rested on the table, where a half-finished cup of ginger tea cooled. He seemed lost in thought about the months in Cambodia, the danger he had faced, and the strange twist of fate that had led him safely back to this home. To her. To Sam, dressed in a light cotton gown, came over quietly and placed a shawl around his shoulders. Her movements were slow, careful, the kind of tenderness that comes from love that has endured both distance and pain. "You're still the same," Lee said softly, glancing at her. "Always taking care of me before yourself." To Sam smiled faintly. "Maybe because I was afraid I'd lose you again," she replied, sitting beside him. "Sometimes I'd wake up at night and wonder if you were even real, or just a memory I couldn't let go of." Lee turned toward her, his eyes reflecting both regret and gratitude. "I'm sorry, to Sam," he said, voice trembling. "I didn't mean to disappear. There were days I thought I wouldn't make it back. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw you standing by the river, waiting." Tears welled up in her eyes. She placed his hand on her belly once more. "You weren't the only one waiting," she whispered. "Our baby. Somehow, I feel he always knew his father would come home." Lee lowered his head, resting his forehead against hers. The silence between them was not empty, it was full of all the words they didn't need to say. Outside, the rain continued to fall softly, washing away months of worry and fear. Then Lee spoke again, his voice a fragile promise carried on the rhythm of the rain. "From now on, I'll never leave you alone again, to Sam. No missions, no distances, no silence between us. Just us and our child." To Sam closed her eyes, leaning into his embrace. Her heart, which had once been filled with uncertainty, now pulsed with quiet hope. The rain outside turned into a lullaby, a song of reunion, healing, and the fragile but unbreakable bond between two souls who had finally found their way back to each other. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the thin curtains, painting soft gold patterns across the floor. The storm had passed. The air was fresh, a gentle mix of earth dew and wildflowers that only came after rain. To Sam stirred awake, her hand instinctively resting on the empty space beside her. For a fleeting second, panic flashed through her chest. But before fear could take root, the door creaked open. Lee stood there, holding a tray with breakfast, a bowl of warm porridge, a cup of milk, and a small bouquet of daisies he had picked from the garden. His smile was quiet, almost shy, the kind that reached deep into her heart. "Good morning," he said softly. "I thought you might be hungry." To Sam couldn't help but laugh, a sound she hadn't made in months. "You cooked?" she teased. "I tried," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Let's say it's a soldier's version of breakfast." She sat up, her belly rounding under the blanket, and took the spoon he offered. The porridge was a little too salty, but to her, it tasted like peace, like love that had survived war, distance, and silence. As she ate, Lee knelt beside the bed, watching her quietly, his eyes softened, his voice trembling slightly. "You know, when I was out there, every night I thought about this moment. I promised myself that if I ever made it back, I wouldn't waste another day without telling you what you mean to me." To Sam paused, her heart tightening. "Lee." He reached for her hand and held it tightly. "Let me say it," he whispered. To Sam, "You've carried my world inside you, literally and emotionally. You waited for me, believed in me, even when everyone told you to move on. I want to spend the rest of my life proving that your faith wasn't in vain." Tears streamed down her face as he slowly got down on one knee. From his pocket, he pulled out a small silver ring, slightly dented, not perfect, but full of meaning. "I don't have much right now," Lee said, voice thick with emotion. "But I have love. I have you. And soon, we'll have our child. Will you marry me?" To Sam. Her sob turned into a laugh, a soft, trembling laugh, full of joy and relief. She nodded, whispering through tears, "Yes, Lee, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her forehead gently. The morning sun bathed them in golden light, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt right again. Outside, the village slowly came to life, birds singing, leaves glistening after the rain, and the faint sound of children's laughter echoing in the distance. Inside that little wooden house, a promise was made, not of perfection, but of faith, forgiveness, and forever. It was no longer just a reunion. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one written not in words, but in the quiet rhythm of two hearts that had finally found their way home. Life has a way of testing the strength of our hearts, through distance, loss, silence, and the storms that come when we least expect them. The story of Lee and to Sam is not merely about love that survives. It is about the quiet endurance of the human spirit, the courage to believe when everything seems lost, and the miracles that arise from faith that never falters. When Lee left for his mission, neither of them knew what awaited him. He was stepping into danger, and she was stepping into motherhood alone. Each night, while the world slept, to Sam stayed awake with her thoughts, some filled with hope, others soaked in tears. She learned that love is not only about holding someone's hand, but about holding their memory, keeping it alive through every lonely sunrise. Her strength was not loud, but it was profound. It lived in her patience, in her willingness to wait, in her quiet belief that love could cross every border, even the invisible one between life and loss. When Lee finally returned, changed by his experiences and burdened with regret, it was to Sam's love that reminded him who he truly was. She did not blame him for the distance or the pain. Instead, she met him with forgiveness, the kind of forgiveness that doesn't erase the past, but transforms it into something meaningful. Her faith became his anchor, her calm became his peace. It was in that embrace, where their tears met, that both realized love had never left them. It had only waited, like the morning after rain. The lesson hidden in their story is simple, yet powerful. Real love is not proven by grand gestures or perfect moments, but by constancy in the face of uncertainty. It is the courage to wait, the grace to forgive, and the hope to begin again. When two souls are truly connected, no distance or silence can destroy that bond. It may bend, it may bruise, but it never breaks. To Sam's sleepless nights by the bedside of the man she loved were not in vain. They were moments of quiet devotion that shaped her strength and deepened her compassion. And when Lee returned, carrying scars both visible and invisible, her presence became his healing. Together, they learned that love is not just something we find, it is something we build, protect, and choose every day. In the end, their story reminds us that miracles often come softly in the form of a hand that still reaches for yours, a heart that still remembers, and a love that endures the long road home. And sometimes, the most unexpected miracle is realizing that the person you were waiting for never truly left. They were always there, living quietly in the corner of your heart, waiting for the day you'd meet again, not as the same people, but as stronger, gentler versions of yourselves. That is the beauty of love that lasts. It doesn't promise a life without storms, only a love strong enough to dance through the rain and find the sun again.